Here.
Committee Member Campillo.
Here.
Committee Member Moreno.
Present.
Chair Elo Rivera.
Present.
Also attending the meeting is Jillian Andolina, Deputy Director in the Independent Budget Analyst Office, Deputy City Attorney Kathy Steinman, and Director of Policy for Mayor Todd Gloria, Matt Yagagan. And if you are in person, please complete a speaker slip located at the entrance of chambers and place it in the box indicated at the speaker's lectern in the front of the room. Please do so in a timely manner to ensure proper meeting management. In-person testimony will conclude before virtual testimony begins. Members of the public can join the webinar by computer, tablet, or smartphone by accessing the link which is listed online in the preamble language of the agenda on the city's webpage. To join the Zoom webinar by telephone, please dial 1-669-254-5252. When prompted, input webinar ID 160-549-8117#. This information is also available on the agenda and will appear on the screen during the public comment period for each agenda item. Members of the public who wish to provide testimony via a call-in or an internet-based service option must enter the virtual speaking queue within 5 minutes after the conclusion of in-person public testimony or before the virtual speaking queue is exhausted, whichever occurs first. If you're watching via City TV 24 or online, there may be a delay. Please participate via the audio on your phone and mute your TV or computer when it is your turn to speak. And if you wish to speak on a particular item, please wait for that item to be called and then raise your hand by tapping the raise your hand icon. Or if you are a call-in participant, press *9 on your phone. If you raise your hand during a non-comment period, your hand will be lowered. Council President.
All right. Thank you, Natalie. We've got a quorum. Let's take up approval of the committee minutes of July 24th, 2024. Natalie, if you would please proceed with public comment on the minutes.
Thank you. The public comment period for the past committee minutes of July 24th, 2024 is now open. And we have not received any speaker slips from individuals in chambers on the past committee minutes, but we do have 2 hands raised in the virtual queue. I will begin the 5-minute timer for all those to indicate that they wish to speak on the past committee minutes. The original, please begin your comments. You'll have 1 minute.
Yeah, first I wanted to say the Zoom time said 2100, which is 9 p.m. So, I mean, that could be confusing to some people if you want to make sure that that's correct next time so that they don't think it's going to be later on in the evening. And then on my comments, I was talking about public input and how important that is. But what was written is saying that public comment reflects the council's actions, which is true. But it's a reflection of the environment that the council has actually created. As far as, you know, dissenting opinions that come from the people and your many times unwillingness to want to hear from people if they are not just kind of, you know, going along with whatever you guys are doing and, you know, giving you accolades. You know, it's important to have dissenting opinions and you're supposed to make your decisions based on the public opinion because you're supposed to represent the people. And, you know, when you do things like silence the people, and you wonder why they get mad, again, that's a reflection of the environment that you have created.
Thank you. Our next caller is iPhone.
Yes, thank you. This is Lori Saldana calling. I didn't realize I need to update the software. I was referring to the code of conduct that came before council at the previous meeting. It deals with many issues about communications by the code of conduct of appointees to boards and commissions. But one thing that was not mentioned, and it's a serious oversight, is how they interact with members of the public in person at meetings, but also on social media. We have seen increasingly very uncivil behavior coming from members, appointees that you have confirmed to boards and commissions, including one person calling people who testify gadflies when they testify at public meetings. This is a person who chairs a subcommittee of another board and hears testimony from people that apparently he does not hold in high regard. So I would encourage this committee to review the code of conduct and make sure that it includes the behavior of appointees towards members of the public.
This does conclude your time. Thank you. And Council President, this will conclude public comment on the past committee minutes.
All right. Thank you for that, Natalie. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Got a motion from Council President Pro Tem LaCava. Council Member Moreno, a second. All right. I don't see any requests to speak to the comments. Natalie, I will just do a voice vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right. That passes unanimously. The motion, the minutes have been approved. And we will now see if there's any committee, mayor, city attorney, or IBA comments. All right. Hearing none. Do we have any requests for continuances? Nope. Okay. All right, let's move to our discussion agenda, beginning with item 1.
Item 1, proposed amendments to the rules of council. If you're watching on City TV or the live stream online and would like to call into the meeting to speak, please call 1-669-254-5252. When prompted, input webinar ID 160-549-8117#. Council President?
All right, thank you so much. Apologies. I think we're going to go and turn it to Luz for the presentation, and then we will have public comment. Go ahead, Luz.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. My name is Luz Anaya. I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Office of the Council President. And you didn't ask, but I'll use 3 minutes for my presentation.
Please proceed.
Thank you. The item before you today is proposed amendments to the rules of council, and this presentation will provide an overview of the 3 changes proposed. Starting with Rule 2.4.3, consent items on the adoption agenda. In subsection E, we are proposing integration of the language to read, an item bypassing council committee review and direct docket shall not be placed on the consent portion of the agenda unless otherwise specified by the council president. It is important to note that this language is mirroring the language of the subsection right above it. And as you may all be aware, the council president does release a memo at the beginning of each year with a comprehensive list of items you can expect this to be applicable to. And this is the only proposed change for Rule 2.4.3. Moving on to Rule 6.6.1, legislative staff. We are proposing amended the language so that instead of the rules reading that the council president shall assign a director of legislative affairs and 1 legislative assistant, it will read, the council president shall assign a director of legislative affairs to assist exclusively with managing the council docket process. This is basically removing the position of the legislative assistant from the rules of council, since this is a personnel matter that should not be subject to the rules, and the position will continue to remain as part of council administration as it has been. And then lastly, for Rule 6.11.1, Budget Review Committee, for subsection E, we are proposing amending the language to read, annual budget review meetings shall be set in accordance with California Government Code Section 54954 after the mayor releases a proposed budget and pursuant to the provisions of Council Policy number 00-02, which is simply modifying the language to be in accordance with our current city practice. And so the action before you today is the approval of the proposed amendments of the rules of council and to forward the recommendation to the city council for consideration and approval. And that does conclude my presentation.
All right, thank you, Luz. With that, let's go ahead and proceed with public comment.
Thank you. The public comment period for item 1 is now open, and we currently have 2 speakers who have submitted speaker slips in the committee room, and there are 4 hands raised in the virtual queue. We will begin with those in the committee room. Terry Hoskins, please approach the lectern. You'll have 2 minutes, and you'll be followed by Paul Kruger.
Thank you. Good morning. Is this okay? Can you hear me all right? I don't know if it's too low. High. I'm Dr. Terry Hoskins. I'm a homeowner in District 9, and I'm running for City Council in District 9. I ask that you reject and remove this power-seeking proposal. It really seems as if it's an invitation for abuse. Any council president should not be allowed to individually place direct docket items on the consent agenda without a previous committee or public hearing. This is too much power for a council president who is elected by the council and not from the people. My question, why does the city council believe it appears legitimate when it consistently rejects fundamental pillars of government such as transparency and accountability? The people are watching, and I ask you to not to align with this type of monocratic leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Kruger, please approach the lectern. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Can you please approach the lectern? That's okay.
Hi, I'm Paul Kruger. I live in Talmadge. My concerns about this matter are that we should be taking every opportunity we can to expand public review and public comment, and allowing one person to decide what issues would be placed on consent agenda, regardless of whether they could be put back on for full discussion, is troubling. The point I want to make is that I understand that the council is trying to streamline business. I don't think this is the way to do it. And as just a matter of example, that I'd like to point out that on July 30th, the full council spent an hour and 18 minutes on proclamations and appointments and ceremonial items. If you remember that, there was an hour and 18 minutes of talk about Transgender History Month, Avid Center Day, Kelly Wood Day, Torrey Pines State Natural Park. It was Colin Stoll Day, and it was Kim Desmond Day. People who I'm sure deserve to be lauded for their work, but an hour and 18 minutes on that was completely unnecessary. One would argue that something like that should be done at another meeting. You can, I don't mean to be facetious, but you can have a party. It would be great. The other thing was that you spent 15 minutes on Becca Taylor, an amazing woman, but that was a completely partisan discussion. So please don't do this. Thank you very
This does
much.
conclude your time, and our final speaker on item 1 in the committee room is Lori Saldana. Please approach the lectern.
Good morning. Just to refer to the previous speakers, they're absolutely right that there is not sufficient public review of many of the things that come before this council. I was at a committee meeting where they waived presentation on 5 items that totaled up to $47 million in contract changes. There was no presentation, no discussion, and then those same items went to the full city council and again were put on consent without discussion, without presentation. The city auditor has found that these contract changes, in many cases, tens of millions of dollars have been spent without going through the proper process. So putting things on consent at the committee level and then putting them on consent at the council level denies the public a chance to fully review and understand why, in the case of those contracts, for example, things were being added, charges were being added in the tens of millions of dollars. This is also a denial of people who don't have access to documents online, who may not have access to read materials in the way that other people do. It's a potential ADA violation, not being able to hear people make a presentation. But more of a concern is the lack of transparency. In the case of those $47 million in contracts, one of the committee members voiced concerns. But instead of asking for a full presentation during the meeting, the member asked for confidential closed door briefings, removing that contract discussion even more from the public view. Were there lawsuits involved? Were there other contract violations that were involved? We may never know because that discussion was never held before the public. And there's no way of knowing if it was held in closed session and in a confidential manner the way that the council member requested. So if this council is going to go towards having more control over locking down information, then there needs to be some way to balance that with making transparency possible for people who don't have the same access to information, whether it's because of developmental or other disabilities. But please don't put these things on consent.
Thank you. This concludes in-person testimony on item 1. We will now move to the virtual queue. I'll begin the 5-minute timer for all those to indicate that they wish to speak to item 1. We currently have 7 hands raised. We will begin with Becky Rapp. Please provide your comments to item 1.
Good morning, Committee Chair Ela Rivera and council members. My name is Becky Rapp, and I'm a public health educator and youth mentor. I come here to speak regarding Rule 243, consent items on the adoption agenda, and suggest that you do not support the modification, stating that an item bypassing council committee review shall not be placed on the consent portion of the agenda unless otherwise specified by the council president. The language added stating that the council president has the power to place an item on the consent calendar without council committee review seems inequitable. The council president should not elevate himself over the other council members. Every council member has oversight of their district, representing a diverse group of people. And when an item comes to the council committee, all members of the committee can discuss the item, as well as allow council members not on the committee to educate themselves prior to full council voting. It's never good practice to allow one individual ability to dictate what can and can't be done. Every item proposed on an agenda should be fully vetted by a committee prior to voting at full council. This allows for transparency as well as public engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker in the queue is phone number ending in 7277. Please press *6 and begin your comments.
Good morning, Rules Committee and Chair Elo Rivera. My name is Diane Grace, and I'm a parent, grandparent, and a concerned member of the city. I know that the rules matter, and I applaud your service on the Rules Committee. I appreciate your stated priorities for 2024, one of which is attention to code and policy changes that would assist and protect citizens as they meet the stresses of working, living in our city, and raising children and grandchildren. Our young people and parents and families need protection that comes from the carefully considered, thoughtful, and research-based policies. So I am most concerned about Rule 2.4.3, quote, "An item bypassing council committee review and direct docketed shall not be placed on the consent portion of the agenda unless otherwise specified by the council president," end of quote. I do not think this is in our best interest to have the council president with such concentrated power. Since consent items are always bundled, these items' real intent is often obscured, making it more difficult for us to understand their impact in our lives and raising our children. This seems to be diametrically the opposite of a city who has set its priorities, transparency, and equal access. There is no equal access going on at City Council if items are not fully presented with their intent and impact fully known to those who will feel their effects the most. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kathleen Lippett. Please begin.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and Rules Committee. My name is Kathleen Lippett. As an advocate on behalf of policies that serve the priorities of communities, I would encourage this committee to make sure that it vets all policies and consent items in a way that is understandable not only to the public, but also the City Council needs to be able to vet these issues. And consent items, if they're not properly vetted by having the council members be able to oversee them, they're likely not going to be very well-informed policies. The public is often left in the dark when items on the consent calendar have not been vetted in public. Often the titles don't even give them much information. And that same problem seems to occur when consent items are placed on the agenda by a council president. Such an action deprives not only City Council committees of the opportunity to properly evaluate these items, but it also further disenfranchises the public. As noted by Ms. Saldana, the approval of millions of dollars was exposed by the city auditor only after the fact. Public policies are better informed when there is more than one person vetting the policy. We need the benefit and the expertise of all City Council members, again, as well as dissenting opinions that may come from the public. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. The 5-minute timer has concluded. We have 4 hands remaining in the virtual queue. We will take no additional callers after these 4. The original, please begin. You'll have 2 minutes.
See, these are the reasons why the public get upset with the things that you do, because on the surface, this looks like it could potentially be good when you're saying it shall not be put on the consent portion of the agenda. But then when you're giving the tyrannical president, the ability to wind up putting it on there anyway, these are the reasons why the public doesn't trust you guys, because you will, take away the transparency of what you're actually doing and hide things from the people by putting it in consent, by not giving presentations. And so all of the public comments so far has been spot on as far as the concerns of this being passed. It's an illusion of, the people having a say when you guys do stuff like this. You claim that you want transparency, but your actions speak louder than your words, because you're doing everything and anything that you can to hide things from the people, whether it's, spending millions of dollars, just even providing, like has been spoken about, the presentations, because you act like they are for you guys. That's why you say, does anybody here want it, when the public is actually needing that in order to see exactly what you're bringing forward. And it's very important for the people to know what you're bringing forward without it being obfuscated, so that they can give you, their opinion based on what it's actually about. But when you throw a bunch of stuff into the consent, it takes the people's ability away to not only voice their concerns, but to just even know exactly what's going on. And so if you guys want to do things that benefit the public and not yourselves and your agendas that you have that are underlying with everything that you're doing, then you would make sure that you do anything and everything possible to make sure that you're not hiding things from the people, being totally transparent and giving the people the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Our next speaker is phone number ending in 7968.
Thank you, Natalie. Good morning, everyone. Joyce Anyata, District 3. Yes, rules matter. Thank you to the person that said that. Chair, President Elo Rivera, and the rest of the committee. These committees, all of the committees, to me, are absolutely important and wonderful. I love the committees. And I wish we had more public participation in the committees. And so I just put that point out there. But Chair President Elo Rivera, will you please tell us when you have specified that an item can be placed on the consent agenda without council committee review? Perhaps what you could do is on the council committee meeting consent agenda, you could mark those items that you did that to with an asterisk, something that would tell us on that sometimes long list of consent items which ones you did that with, so that ahead of time I could do the backup work to find out how I want to speak on that item. So I hope that makes sense, Chair and committee, and please consider that. Otherwise, I'm for this. And then I'm also for the other items, Rule 661 regarding legislative staff, and Rule 6.11.1E, the Budget Review Committee item, and involving code and policy. So thank you so much. Hope you had a chance to rest and refresh. It's good to have you all back, and I appreciate you all so very much and love to all.
Thank you. This does conclude your time. Thank you. Our next speaker is Peggy Walker.
Good morning. This is Peggy Walker. I join those who support committee and public review. I can't imagine any voter who wouldn't find this suggested move objectionable. When an item bypasses a committee, it shouldn't be able to be agendized as a consent item, because that takes it out of public reach and hearing, and it eliminates the value of other council member vetting. when items are not reviewed in a purview, allowing the public to hear about them before council action. It also takes away the public's equal access right to learn, evaluate, and give feedback, and it eliminates accountability and transparency. That's not a democratic approach. Giving the council president the power to put just about anything on consent would be a precarious move that makes it far too easy to bypass public information, understanding, and involvement. It gives the president powers superseding those of other councilmen and eliminates transparency of action. Please support public participation. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker in the queue is Lisa Mortensen. Please begin. Lisa? Lisa, I see you have your hand raised for item 1. Okay, Council President, this concludes public comment on item 1.
Thank you, Natalie. All right, we'll begin committee discussion with Councilmember Campillo.
Thank you, Council President. Just to be clear, any council member still has the power to pull anything off of consent agenda at any time, correct?
Correct.
All right, so it seems that we are the ones responsible to make sure if we have something to dive deeper in. If we feel that any particular council president is abusing the authority or trying to hide something, it's up to the council to get to the bottom of it. So I don't think this is really an overstretch, but I do know that the current council president, you almost always speaks to committee chairs about their prerogative and items that would go to their committee. So I know that you've been doing a good job of making sure that we stay informed as to what's coming. The IBA also does an analysis of every single item, regardless of whether it's on the consent agenda or not, correct?
That's correct.
And I know that your office has regularly flagged many items for us when they come up. So I think we're not treading into any dangerous waters with this. I think it's up to each council member to monitor the agenda effectively. And I know each of our staffs does that well. So I'm happy to make a motion to approve the item.
Thank you, Councilmember Campillo. I appreciate those comments. Really quickly, as you said, any council member can remove an item from the consent agenda. And then, as always, we have done nothing to change the direct docket process. So the bypassing of committee for an item that should have went to a committee requires the consent of the chair, which we've really leaned into over the last few years, as you've noted. So thank you for those comments. Thank you for the motion. We'll now go to Council President Pro Tem LaCava.
Thank you, Council President. I think it bears repeating something you said that the public listening may not have caught, which is that the Council President has not direct docketed without talking to the chair of the affected council committee, so that there is not a unilateral decision. What I'll second the motion. Let me start off with that. You won't hear me say this often, but I can tell you that I'm very disappointed by the public comment, especially people that have been watching city council meetings for a very long time. Correct me if I'm wrong, Council President, but item E has only been in our rules of council since 2022, 2023, right? I actually brought that idea forward and it got incorporated. So it's only been around for a year or two.
2023, I believe.
23. Yep. So since strong mayor form of council for 15 years, that role wasn't even in place. And the council president, whoever was in place at that time, could do anything they wanted. And we introduced that to make sure that the heavier, more complicated items did not slip through and just get placed on consent. And I think for the past year plus, that it has worked very well. So this is something that is a refinement as I see it, because the other thing I get frustrated about is when we put rules in council that are too rigid and we're constantly having to waive the rules of council. This just creates a path. And there, as Councilmember Campillo said, a responsibility of the other 8 council members. There is a responsibility of the chair of the respective affected committees to weigh in. And there is a very robust process to make sure items that really deserve and need to have the more public conversation. There's a lot of routine business, nuts and bolts stuff that we can do better to deal with. But I have not seen an example The auditor's report is not about this at all. So let's not confuse the two. That's a different conversation. That will be an important conversation to have. But that is not what we're talking about here on this particular proposed set of changes. The other changes are that good governance, that routine updating of the rules of council, catching it up with how practice actually happens. So again, I'm happy to support the item. And this is a refinement of something that I asked for back in 2023, and I think it's an appropriate refinement and an important one. So.
Thank you, Council President Pro Tem. We've got a motion and a second. I'll thank Luz and you and Heidi for your work on this, as well as Chief Deputy City Attorney Ferbert for working on these rule changes. As Council President Pro Tem, you noted, Councilmember Campillo, this actually isn't a radical change. It's a refinement over kind of a process that was meant to add transparency. And we, as you were noting, Council President Pro Tem, felt a little rigid. There were certain items that were ending up on the discussion agenda that felt like they were unnecessarily slowing down meetings. And we will continue to make sure that our committee chairs are fully empowered to decide which items bypass the committee. That's been super important to me. I think this council over the last few years is that committee chairs are not undermined. Their authority to bring items to their committee is treated with the respect that it deserves. So I wanted to make sure I noted this to make things a little bit more clear. What I have asked is that for the when this item presumably passes and moves to full council, that in the backup materials will add the direct docket memo so that the public can take a look at exactly what the procedures are for direct docketing an item. That might add some clarity for Ms. Nyata and others. I appreciate Ms. Nyata providing some productive questions and feedback there. I always appreciate that. We'll try to attach that. And then the last thing I wanted to note here is that and this, to your point, Council President Pro Tem, we make changes because we think that they'll be a good idea and they'll improve the process, and sometimes they require a little bit more tinkering, and that's all that's happening here. So thank you to my colleagues for giving this a look. Appreciate the motion and the second. And with that, Natalie, if you'd like to call the roll.
And the motion passes unanimously, 5-0.
All right. Thank you so much, Natalie. With that, let's move to non-agenda public comment.
Thank you, Council President. Per Rule 2.7, non-agenda public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are not on the agenda, but within the subject matter jurisdiction of the committee. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. If you have already joined the Zoom webinar online or by phone and have non-agenda public comment, please raise your hand at this time if you wish to speak. And Council President, we currently have 1 speaker who has submitted a speaker slip in chambers, and there are currently 4 hands raised in the virtual queue. We will begin with those in chambers. So Lori Saldana, please approach the lectern. You'll have 2 minutes.
It's always interesting to hear how you describe your intent and then how it's carried out regarding transparency. So I'll just cut right to my statement. Consider this a notice of intent to sue over repeated and continued violations of the Brown Act while planning and conducting ceremonial events, and also on July 1st, violating Council Policy 000-10 by the President of the Council, Mayor Todd Gloria, and others. On that date, you had a ceremony in the chamber. It started before the regular council meeting, but there was no request to hold a non-council meeting ceremony. It continued into the regular meeting that day. So you never provided notice of that event as the Brown Act requires. You once again held a proclamation the week before, and then you did a ceremony on a separate date in violation of legal case number, well, I won't give the whole number, but from 2017 when this council was sued on exactly that position. But you cannot say a proclamation and a ceremony are one and the same, but have them on 2 different days. So this complaint and intent is filed on behalf of all members of the public who have a legal right to receive meeting information and agenda notices before your council meetings, including ceremonies, and to comment during those meetings and ceremonies on agenda items as provided by the Brown Act and by the rules of council. You actually held a special session and closed session to do a resolution of unconditional support of the Brown Act when you violated the ceremonial, when you had a ceremony for the police chief. Why, I don't understand. You continue to dishonor the people that you hold ceremonies for by doing these in illegal ways. It's dishonorable to former chief of police. It's dishonorable to the LGBTQ community to hold a pride ceremony and not announce it and hold it in the city council chamber so that it overlaps with a regular council meeting. So this is the written notice. I will leave it with the clerk, and please don't do another unconditional support
This does
resolution.
conclude your time. This concludes in-person public testimony on non-agenda public comment. We will move to the virtual queue, and I'll begin the 5-minute timer for all those to indicate that they wish to call in for non-agenda public comment. We currently have 6 hands raised. We'll begin with Becky Rapp. Please provide your comments.
Good morning, Rules Committee. My name is Becky Rapp, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you via Zoom. Responsibilities such as childcare and work obligations wouldn't allow me to speak otherwise. I too wanted to bring to your attention an article posted in the UT last month titled "San Diego Improperly Upped Spending on Contracts by $155 Million." The mayor and city staff have regularly increased spending limits for city contracts by amounts totaling millions without obtaining the required city council approval beforehand. The audit determined that these improper approvals total about 30% of all contract dollars. This type of money mismanagement can become devastating to the bottom line, as well as instill distrust and uncertainty among residents in our city. After a very tough budget cycle where many programs were limited or eliminated because of funding resources, it is more important than ever that this office, as well as the mayor and council, act in full transparency. I'd like to suggest this committee that you prioritize transparency among council members, the mayor's office, and residents. Backdoor deals have to be eliminated, and full transparency is the only way to regain the trust of the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Megan Stewart. Please begin. Megan Stewart.
Hi, sorry about that. I think there was a little delay. Good morning, members of the Rules Committee. My name is Megan Stewart. I'm here today to strongly advocate for the continuation of virtual public comment in city council meetings. I understand that you've received many letters and other public comments on this subject. My own situation is emblematic of what others face. In our diverse city, many residents live significant distances from City Hall, with traffic getting worse every day. For those in outlying areas and those with limited transportation options, attending in-person meetings can be very challenging. Virtual public comment has provided these residents with a vital opportunity to participate in civic meetings, ensuring that their voices are heard regardless of their physical location. I also understand the difficulties of balancing childcare responsibilities with civic engagement. For parents, attending meetings in person often means finding childcare, which can be both expensive and logistically challenging. The option of virtual comments has allowed parents to contribute to important discussions without the added burden of arranging care. By retaining virtual public comment options, San Diego can continue to embrace transparency, accessibility, and civic participation for all residents, regardless of their personal circumstances or logistical challenges. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Madison Rapp. Madison, please begin.
Hi, I also wanted to speak about the ability to participate virtually, and I just wanted to say that it would be incredibly devastating for many people if you choose to eliminate virtual public comments from city meetings. Limiting access to only those who are able to attend in person would be a severe blow to equity among those who want to be involved. I want my voice, the voice of a young mother, to be heard. I have 2 little boys, ages 7 and 4, and a 9-month-old baby girl who I exclusively breastfeed. With my responsibilities, I don't have time or freedom in my daily schedule to drive downtown, find and pay for parking, haul my 3 kids out of the van, and spend potentially hours waiting to speak. And trust me, if you knew how loud my kids are, you would not want all 4 of us sitting there in person during your whole meeting. It would be very disruptive. My point is, it would be quite prohibitive for people with young children to raise their voices of concern if it were required to be in person. I'm certainly not the only parent or the only working parent who would be left out of the conversation if virtual comments are not taken. In the current setup where people can participate virtually, it is so simple and easy for me to nurse my baby in the comfort of my home, put her down for a nap in her crib, get my boys to school or busy playing, and participate in local government through Zoom. What a blessing. Also, I personally don't want or need to speak on every single agenda item, but when issues come up that are important to me and my family, if I want to speak out, it is imperative that I can participate virtually. Otherwise, my voice would be lost, and how many others will also be lost? Who will you be hearing from? I have a strong desire to share my values and contribute my voice to our community. I hope you will consider those of us who have little people who depend on us full time and do not choose to remove our access to virtual public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. The 5-minute timer has concluded. We have 4 hands remaining in the virtual queue. We will take no additional callers after these 4. Phone number ending in 7968. Please press *6 and begin your comments.
Thank you, Natalie. Joyce Inata, District 3. First of all, as I was sitting here listening, a thought popped up that I hadn't checked to see if the Community and Neighborhood Services Committee was on for tomorrow. When I looked at it, I can't remember when, not too long ago, of course, I saw it was adjourned. So, because that's my topic. So, Chair President Elo Rivera, I did not have time to go in and try to dig up what are the rules on adjournments of committee meetings. I love committees. I think all of you know that. And it really, really, really saddens me when I see an adjournment. And here is the reason I feel that mostly. I don't know why. Why did it get adjourned? That is so critical. And I'm talking about the Community and Neighborhood Services Committee adjournment of tomorrow. So I want to begin by sending thoughts of well-being and blessings to who is the chair of that committee, Council Member Campbell. And, you know, we have vice chairs on those committees. So I really, really, really want, and I will research this later, but I just wanted all of you to know that it would be great transparency and accountability if in those memos on the adjournment, you could let the public know why it was adjourned, because this Community and Neighborhood Services Committee, I mean, what's more important than our communities? And there are 10 big items of responsibility for that committee, and 8 of them are vitally important to the public and to everybody. So I don't understand it, and I really, really want more information on the agenda. Okay, thank you. Sorry, love to all.
The original, please provide your comments. You'll have 2 minutes.
Yeah, the constant abuse of authority, you know, leads you guys to face, and I mean, it's the people because we're the ones paying for the litigation and any money that has to come out from it. But it's your actions, and you want to sit here and, you know, use so many different excuses as to why the meetings take longer. And, you know, it's sad to see how you claim that, you know, people commenting on certain things isn't necessarily productive in your eyes because they're not, you know, giving you accolades and, you know, praising you guys for everything that you're doing. But you act like it's either the people, which you wanted to silence the people and take away virtual public comment, which seemingly, you know, Sean, you've retracted and since decided against, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to come forward. But you guys are the ones, when you sit there and go on your diatribes, are the reason why these meetings take longer. Because half the time you're silencing the people down to 1 minute when you're saying that you would like to hear from them, giving them no real opportunity to, you know, address you guys and redress their grievances. But and even just saying that, putting these things on consent so that the meetings don't take longer. Well, maybe you should be looking at your own actions as to why meetings do take longer when you could sit up there for 20 to 40 minutes each person sitting there and talking about whatever it is that you're bringing forward, all while silencing the public, but using the public as a scapegoat as to why the meetings take longer. And part of that is that you guys put a bunch of items on the agenda and you don't think that they should all be addressed. But if you're doing things that should be addressed, which every item should be addressed by the public, and so that they can voice their concerns and or opinions based on that. But we already know that you've already made your decisions before you even hear from the public, and that's why it's an illusion of choice for the people, and that's that needs to be mitigated immediately.
Thank you. This does conclude your time. Our next speaker is Kathleen Lippett. Kathleen Lippett.
Thank you again for letting me speak. My name is Kathleen Lippett, and I am concerned about the autonomy and the ability of city planning groups to serve their communities. They provide, and they were created for the purpose of being able to provide the unique information regarding their communities that the city has no ability to be able to appreciate or know about. The new 600-24 rules that were established by the city have been particularly problematic for many of these planning groups. But more recently, it was the Uptown. Well, La Jolla is one of them, and Uptown was the other, where their established procedures were taken over by a new group that seemed to be more compatible or friendly to the city. So I think that it's really important that that autonomy with community planning groups be respected. And the city has enough on its plate that it should take care of its city business. They were not elected to opine and interfere with community groups. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. And our final speaker in the queue is Judy Strang. Please begin.
Good morning, Rules Committee. I too thank you for your service on the Rules Committee. As a person who often signs up for the parliamentarian work at our PTAs, I appreciate how important infrastructure is and the role that Rules Committee plays in setting that up. My question is about a rule regarding committee meetings. This morning, just as you were beginning your very important discussion for item 1, the hearing officer meeting was also happening at the very same time. And it had some information that was very important to the Coastal Council PTA, where I'm the Ledge VP. And I was torn between the two meetings. Would there ever be a reconsideration of a 9 o'clock start time for your committee meetings when they bounce against hearing officer meetings? Even if you had a 10 o'clock time, it would allow us to address our concerns first at hearing officer and come over to committee meetings. I was very impressed with the comments people were making regarding their need to share the way that their life was and the things that are important to them as part of the public comment opportunity. And I'm thinking about my own situation as a native San Diegan, an older San Diegan, and I have 19 grandchildren, and I work in an after-school program at my elementary school where teens come and provide service. Daily, I have interaction with young people, and so I feel compelled to come and share with you what I see there, what's going on there, and to have lost that opportunity, I think would be a loss to the city, because so many of you do not have teenagers in your circle of acquaintance on a daily basis, and boy, I sure do. So I'm pleased to see perhaps that ship sailed, and we will continue to have Zoom for this opportunity. And if we could take a look at committee meetings bouncing against hearing officer and perhaps even planning commission, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Council President, this concludes non-agenda public comment.
All right. Thank you, Natalie. Appreciate everyone who shared their comments. With that brings us to the end of our meeting. Our next Rules Committee meeting will be Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024 at 9 a.m. Thank you, everyone. We are now adjourned.